A lot of people ask, what's the difference between appraisal and performance management? And quite honestly, the best way to describe it, I think, is to think of it in terms of managing your finances. Performance management is rather like managing your finances all the year round, from month in and month out. Appraisal is like the profit and loss account or the bank statement at the end of the period. So appraisal is a snapshot in time which summarises your performance to date from the past and points the way forward for the next period. Thinking of performance management, we often look at that as a cycle of 5 steps. The important first step is to be clear with the job holder what your expectations are if you are an organisation or if you are the job holder's line manager. What exactly is that role? What are the key activities you expect from somebody? How is the individual going to be judged? By what standards? Secondly, once you've clarified that, you're in a position to assess somebody's performance against the standards that you've already agreed. Does their performance exceed your expectations? Does it meet the expectations, or does it in fact fall short? The third step in the cycle then is to review the performance with the individual, a bit like the school report, if you like, although once we're at work, we hope that it's a mutual conversation with give and take on both sides. After that, you look towards the future. So that the fourth step in the cycle is about setting goals and targets for the next performance period, very often a year, although it might be 6 months or even 3. And the final step in the cycle is development planning. In order to meet those goals, it's their further training or further development that the individual will need. Some organisations ask, well, training in performance management might require 2 or 3 days. Why can't I just train my people to fill in the appraisal documentation? And it's a shortcut that many organisations take. The challenge with that is that filling in the documentation is in fact only the final step in the process of performance management, which itself culminates in appraisal. It's a bit like teaching someone how to write the minutes of a meeting without teaching them or training them how to run a successful meeting or participate in one. So, if you like, you would only be training people in the last and perhaps the least important step. In a lot of organisations, it can be a challenge for HR and for the training department to get line managers fully involved with performance management. I have some sympathy with the view. Line managers have got plenty to do, doing their own job, as it were, without necessarily performance managing the people who report to them. Having said that, you might say, what more important job does a line manager have than to optimise the performance of his or her team members? To get line managers really to engage with the performance management process and not just play lip service to it, I think we need to get that message across and really to establish for line managers how important a part of their role performance managing their team is. One step in doing that would be to model that. So let's say the directors and the senior managers of the organisation, do they themselves take performance management seriously? Do they spend time with their managers performance managing? Or is it something that just happens ad hoc when we have to do it rather than the lifeblood of the organisation? I do think it's crucially important that line managers take it seriously. Otherwise, how can we expect the job holders to do so? We spoke about line managers taking the process seriously. Of course, it's equally important that the job holder engages with the process. So often you hear organisations say, oh, performance management is a two-way process. This is meant to be a two-way discussion, but it doesn't actually happen that way, nor do job holders perceive it that way. One mistake, I think, that line managers can make is to write an appraisal, for instance, or write a performance review, and then afterwards discuss it with the individual. This will have the effect of making the job holder feel that the whole review is cut and dried before he or she even turns up for the discussion. In my book, it's very, very important that the emphasis in training and development for line managers is on how to hold the performance management review, and then using the documentation, whatever that may be, simply to summarise what the manager and the job holder have discussed and agreed between them, the minutes, if you like, of the performance management meeting, rather than an agenda set in advance. It's a funny thing, but in these difficult times, a lot of organisations will say to us at MLR that it's not easy to find funding for training in performance management and appraisals, and I have sympathy with that point of view. What I would say, though, to such organisations is it's worthwhile, when considering the funding, to think of that not as a cost, but as a genuine investment in the health of your organisation and in the performance, both present and future, of your managers and of your job holders.